Welcome everybody to 100 Days Survival in an Ocean World. That's right, the entire world is an ocean except for a few islands scattered around. If you guys are familiar, Paul GG did their very own 100 Days Ocean World Survival around a year ago. In this world, I won't be able to find any overworld structures such as villages. Instead, I am stuck in an open sea with nothing but a few trees. So I have a lot of work to do before I'm ready to beat the Ender Dragon. And remember, if you do go on to enjoy this video, make sure to smash that like button to let me know that you enjoyed it, because this video was a ton of fun to make. Lastly, make sure to hit the subscribe button, because not all of you are actually subscribed, and it's free, so you could always unsubscribe later. Now without further ado, let's get straight into the video. I spawned on a small island with a beehive and 2 birch trees. After taking in my surroundings, I started off by gathering some wood, just like any other playthrough. I got some stone and decided to flatten the island just a bit to allow for more trees to grow. Then I took a look out on the water and noticed one of my bees decided that they didn't want to stay on the island anymore. I ended up searching for shipwrecks and found some iron. I crafted some doors to be able to get the second chest without drowning, and I ended up finding a buried treasure map as well. On night 1, I decided to mine throughout the night and found a few iron ore. Finally, I found some coal and was able to make a few torches in order to secure the island. Since my trees wasn't growing, I decided to go back to one of the shipwrecks to gather logs from the mast. On day 2, I finished gathering the logs as the sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon. I decided to head back to the island and began to build my very first home. I began by building a small circle made out of dirt on the side of my island. While building, I found out I would be needing a lot of dirt, so I set off to gather more. I also didn't want to ruin the beauty of the island, so this meant I would need to find dirt underground. Meanwhile, I decided to collect some fish to eat. Seeing how hunger would be a problem, we would need to set up a farm ASAP. The rest of the day was spent mining. Yeah, just mining. Until I found a mine shaft. This is huge because now I can collect string and possibly get a spider spawn in order to craft wool for beds. I tried my best to explore it, but after one too many close calls, I decided it would be best for me to gather what I could and get out before dying. After grabbing 12 string, I decided it would be best for me to go ahead and craft a bed so I could sleep through the rest of the night. Day 3. The first night's sleep on any new world is a blessing, even more so on this new one. I decided my next best step was to acquire a food source, so that meant going back down into the mine shaft in order to gather 2 more string. I then created a fishing rod to help us gather I mistyped that in my script. Let me just... fish. There we go. I then was going to spend the rest of day 3 fishing, but on my very first cast, I got a mending Luck of the Sea 3 fishing rod. I decided to go back down into the mines and mine some coal with the fishing rod equipped in my offhand in order to repair it. After repairing it, I then continued to fish all throughout day 3. I didn't seem to get a lot of fish, but I did get rather lucky, as I would say. Not only did I get the Mending Luck of the Sea 3 fishing rod, I was also able to obtain a Power 4 Unbreaking 3 bow. It was at low durability, so I decided to leave it alone for now in hopes of repairing it one day. On day 4, I remembered I got a buried treasure map from the sunken ship on day 1, so I decided it would be best for me to see what kind of loot I could get from it. While going to the buried treasure, I also spotted a ruined portal not too far from my island. I searched for a chest, but sadly I seemed to not be able to find one, so I mined the gold blocks and continued to search for buried treasure. I also spotted a ocean monument which would be needed if we ever decided to gather sponges. When I arrived at the treasure location, I also spotted another sunken ship in the distance. Our luck seemed to continue. After looting the chest, I discovered 3 diamonds inside, and after gathering the buried treasure loot, I headed over to borrow whatever loot lay inside. After getting home, I decided I would craft myself some iron armor as well as a diamond pickaxe to begin gathering obsidian for my next project. I began day 5 by going back into the mine shaft. I had hopes of clearing it out and placing torches to make it safer to traverse, with hopes of finding more iron. While clearing it out, I was able to find a huge gold ore vein, as well as my very first set of seeds. I'll beat it. See what I did there? Or am I just beating a dead horse? Okay, I'll stop now before you beat me to death. I was also shot by a skeleton through some lava, which confused me at first due to not being able to see the skeleton. But after mining some more iron and gathering string, I eventually found a zombie spawner. For some reason it didn't spawn with chests, but I wasn't going to complain. This would help us eventually make an XP farm if I decided to. I eventually found a spider spawner that I was looking for. I actually found 3 spider spawners right next to each other, with 2 more not that far away. But I was more excited that I was able to find a zombie villager. Now this is a huge find since villagers aren't able to spawn on this ocean-only world. I decided I would craft an anvil while I was down here and name the zombie in order to keep him from despawning. I decided on naming him Paul. I'm not sure why, I just kinda like the name. I then spent the rest of the day deciding on how to get him out into the surface. I eventually decided that I wanted to boat him up in hopes that it was nighttime or that I could at least save him by breaking the boat and leading him to land where I could then trap and save him one day. But sadly this didn't work, as I forgot that boats do not float if they are submerged underwater. So I had to lead him all the way through the mines, getting lost once or twice. On day 7 I finally got Paul back to the surface. After getting lost in the mines for a few times, I had also found a golden apple. So all we needed now was to go to the nether, find some blaze rods and a brown mushroom in order to craft a potion of weakness to get our very first villager. Before that, however, I decided to set up a small farm area by my house in order to begin growing food. While destroying the ruined portal, I did find the chest. In retrospect, I should have found it a lot sooner. I got some pretty good loot from it either way. After gathering the 10 obsidian to create the portal, I decided to build a small cobblestone walkway away from the island to try and keep any nasties from getting in the overworld. On day 8, I completed our nether portal platform as well as building the nether portal. I decided to craft a pair of golden boots before entering in order to trade with some piglins to obtain both ender pearls and fire resistant potions. Before I went into the portal, however, I needed more food, so I went fishing again. I then decided to use the bones I got from the mine shaft to get some grass in hopes of getting a wheat seed. Luckily, I got one on my first use and decided to make a wheat farm as well. After lighting the portal and entering, I had only one task in mind, finding the nether fortress. But right before that I spotted a piglin and I realized I forgot my gold. So after going back into my portal, it seemed to spawn me under the ground. So I broke the nether portal it created and climbed my way back to the surface. The beginning of day 9, I decided to get some more food before heading back into the nether. I used a portal calculator to replace my nether portal in order to have it safely teleport me back to my island instead of making a new one underground. Afterwards, I set out to trade for some fire res potions, and to look for a nether fortress. After trading with the piglin and only getting one fire resistance potion, I took off in search of that nether fortress. I ended up finding a bastion first, however, and after looting it and stealing all of its gold, I used a trick I learned a while back that includes taking your coordinates and going directly opposite of them in order to find a nether fortress. And after running around for a few hours, I ended up finding a nether fortress. After finding a blaze spawner, I decided to set up a small makeshift grinder that would allow me to safely gather blaze rods. After a few close calls, I ended up finishing the grinder and gathered the remaining blaze rods I needed and started to head back to the overworld. And while heading back, I found a few chests, got some bread, gold, and luckily found 3 more diamonds. On day 11, I exited the nether portal and I figured it would be a good idea to check on Paul. After seeing that he's doing fine, I decided that the loneliness was killing me, and I must confess, that I decided to bring him back to life using the golden apple we found earlier. I also noticed I picked up some ancient debris. When trying to create the fermented spider eye needed to create the potion of weakness, I realized I needed sugar, and for that I needed sugarcane, which means I have to go find some sugarcane. On day 12, I searched for some sugarcane and I found 2 islands with both oak trees and a few flowers. I decided to take the oak and hope to find a sapling. I looted another sunken ship and found both carrots and potatoes. Our food issue would soon be solved, thankfully. After finding another island, I was lucky enough to find both a chicken and sugarcane on the island. I decided to take what loot I had and headed back to my island to continue to fix Paul. On day 13, I arrived back at my island and began the process of turning Paul back into a villager. I planned on making him a farmer villager first in order to help me gather emeralds for future trades. I decided to make the house platform into a farming platform, but I still needed more dirt. So I decided to go back to the islands I found in order to gather the dirt from them. After returning to the island, I noticed my zombie was transformed back into a villager. I proceeded to spend the rest of the day building the farmlands. Day 14 began with me planting and lighting the farm. I used the bone mill I have to place all the potatoes and carrots that I could. I also made sure our villager would buy potatoes and carrots in order to maximize our profits. After situating Paul on the farm, I decided to extend the nether portal slightly to make it line up better with the platform. Day 15, I decided the first thing I should do before going mining is create an enchantment table and try to get at least Fortune 1 on one of my pickaxes. I was able to get Unbreaking 1 and Efficiency 1 on my diamond pickaxe, and I noticed that Paul had left his job. So I decided to put a small fence around him to keep him inside the farm area. Sadly, I ran out of wood before I could finish the fence, so I decided to wait until a tree grew in order to finish it. I decided to go into the nether to mine some of the bone blocks I spotted near my portal in order to make the process of growing trees faster. Day 16 started as any other. Farm the land, gather food, chop some wood. I then completed the fence around the farmlands, ensuring our villager couldn't escape anymore. I then proceeded to head into the mineshaft once more with hopes of gathering more diamonds and crafting a set of diamond armor soon. After finding some diamonds and another mineshaft, I had a few close calls with some skeletons. I looted a few minecart chests and was able to find another zombie villager. I knew I was a long way from the surface, but I was desperate to get the second villager, so I could start breeding them as soon as possible. So I then proceeded to climb to the surface with my new friend in tow. Day 19 started by curing my second zombie villager. I then decided I would need a house in order for them to start to breed and for me to grow my empire. I began by building a second diamond off the side of the farm. After laying out the floor plan, I went into the nether to gather some basalt, as I thought it would make for a good accent for the blackstone build. When I started this, I didn't expect to be spending 10 full days in the nether, so on days 20 through 30, I spent in the nether searching for a basalt biome. I know I found one somewhere, but I couldn't remember where. So after spending 10 full days in the nether, I decided to take what I had and go back into the overworld and try to complete my build. On day 31, I fought with my new villager to get him inside of the farm to make it easier for them to get over to the new villager hut. I couldn't think of a good name for him besides Paul 2, so make sure to comment down below what you guys think I should name him. The comment with the most upvotes will be chosen. I continued to build the villager hut, but by no means am I a good builder, so I ended up restarting again and again until I decided on a good look. I then began fitting it out with all sorts of jobs and beds in order to maximize the amount of villagers I would eventually have. And after I finished the build, I decided to bring over the villagers and watch as they shook hands. On days 33 through 35, I went out to gather more sand to craft some glass panes in order to complete the villager hut as well as get started building my house. I realized that on day 3 I said I'd start to build my house, but I totally forgot about doing that. So I finished building what I consider the ugliest house I've ever built. I mean, look at it. It doesn't even have a roof. If it rains, I'm going to be soaked. Nevertheless, I went farming for some potatoes and ended up AFKing for the next 2 days while I made myself some dinner IRL. Day 36, when I came back, I decided to make an XP farm above ground. But first, I needed to get enough cobblestone to make it work. So I went mining, and I spent the rest of the day mining. And hey, I even found a few diamonds while I was down there. Days 37 through 45, I then started by creating another platform off the side of my base. Everyone built a mob grinder once or twice, so editor, roll that montage. The sun began to set on day 45. I lay down in bed once again, thinking of everything we've accomplished, but yet we still had more to do. I began day 46 by breeding my villagers once again. I really wanted to get a mending villager before I headed towards the end to fight the Ender Dragon, and I was dead set on getting one. I also took the time to farm and gather more emeralds so that way when I did get a mending villager, I would be able to purchase as many as possible. I ended up getting 12 mending books, which should suffice me for a while. I then made a makeshift enchanting area on top of my base in order to enchant some diamond armor. I began day 47 by building an enchantment table on top of my house. The second floor would be used specifically to store my books and any leather that I gather. Speaking of leather, I was back off into the nether in order to trade with some piglins for some. I gathered all of my gold and headed in. After searching for a new piglin to trade with, I used all my gold and only got a few leather. So I set out the next 3 days to mine all of the gold ore I could find. And after getting enough gold nuggets, I crafted them into ingots and continued trading. I then headed back into the overworld to build my enchanting room. I decided to build an automatic sugarcane farm. I'm not the best when it comes to these kinds of builds, so it took me a few tries to get it correct. I ended up wasting an entire day just gathering the materials that we would need for it. I ended up going back into the nether to gather gold and craft some powered rails. I noticed halfway into the build that I had built it too low, so I had to destroy it and would build it higher. It took me a few more tries, but I finally got a design that I thought would work for what I needed. Using redstone lamps, I was able to send a redstone signal down and activate the pistons as needed. I needed some glass for both the house and the sugarcane farm, so I decided to hop into a boat and headed off to the island I had found earlier. I had found the island with a few trees on it, so I decided to stop by and gather some wood. After taking care of all of the mobs on the island, I heard a familiar oink, and to my surprise, a pig had spawned on the island. I decided it would be a great idea to take him home, so I loaded him up in the boat and gathered the rest of my sand and headed back to the island. I put him in the farming pen for now since I didn't have another place for him, and I couldn't think of a name for him either, so make sure to comment down below what you think we should name him. After going back into the nether and gathering more quartz and glowstone, I finally had enough resources to finish our sugarcane farm. I headed back into the overworld and was quite happy with myself for being able to build one after so many years. On day 60, I knew the day was getting closer for us to fight the Ender Dragon. I didn't want to save it for last, mainly because I wanted to try and obtain a beacon by the end of our 100 days. So I started crafting more books and bookshelves for trying to get some good enchants on my diamond armor. I also decided that it would be a good idea to try and get fortune on a pickaxe to make mining diamonds easier. After enchanting my armor, I got fortune 2 on a diamond pickaxe, and decided to spend the next 10 days mining. I was going to need a lot of iron and diamonds. On day 70, I took a look at just how much I had mined and was happy with myself and my loot. I ended up with over a stack of both iron and diamonds. I woke up on day 71 and decided to craft and enchant the rest of my diamond armor. I took a look at my mob grinder and realized that I had built it wrong and it just wasn't working. I haven't built an actual mob grinder since version 1.6.4, so I put my pride away and decided to look up a tutorial. I then spent the rest of days 71 through 75 rebuilding the grinder to actually work. I realized that I would need a lot of string in order to make the dispensers that I needed. Luckily, I knew exactly where a cave spider spawner was, so I quickly gathered some wood and headed back down towards my mineshaft. I started removing all of the string surrounding the spider spawners, and then I excavated around it, creating a wide enough area for spiders to spawn. After adding some water and crafting up some trapdoors, all I needed was a few hoppers in order to finish it off. I was lucky enough to use 2 spider spawners that spawned close enough to one another. So I proceeded to AFK through the rest of day 75 in order to obtain all of the string I needed. Day 76, I began construction on the new mob grinder. I started by tearing down the old one and remove all of the water from the inside. I have a link in the description to the farm tutorial I used as well for anyone who's interested. After spending all of day 76 breaking down the old grinder, I began construction on the new one. After getting the first platform finished, I realized my pickaxe was quite low on health, so I headed back down to the spider grinder once again. On day 80, I realized that the end of this 100 days was approaching a lot faster than I would have liked. I hurriedly threw together the rest of the mob farm, and luckily I got another zombie villager. I quickly converted him into a regular villager and went back to my base to gather all of my blaze rods and ender pearls in order to make some eyes of ender. Today was the day we would defeat the Ender Dragon. After gathering all of my eyes of ender, I would only need one more thing, and that was to enchant my sword. So while my third villager was being cured, I farmed some more carrots and potatoes for emeralds. I also added a few doors to the villager shack. I'm not sure why, but I thought this might fix them not having babies. The new villager gave me an efficiency 5 for 8 emeralds, so I decided to lock him in hopes to get bookshelves as well. Spoiler alert, he didn't. I began searching for the end portal on day 80. I brought with me a few items as well as some obsidian in order to craft another portal when we arrived. I hoped I would have everything I needed in order to beat the dragon. I threw my first Eye of Ender and off I went to find the end. I ended up finding the stronghold, and thankfully it was peeking out of the water so I didn't have to mine into it. After entering, I was confronted by a few mobs. I found the stronghold's library, so much knowledge at my fingertips. I decided to mine and gather a few stacks of books, seeing how leather was hard to come by. These would help me fill out my enchanting area and decor needs. Finally, I found the portal. I slowly placed every Eye of Ender in, the portal seemingly calling my name. As I placed in the last eye, I took a deep breath and jumped in. I started by destroying the end crystals. One by one, they all fell. When the dragon swooped down for its first landing, I laid into it with everything I had, doing a decent amount of damage. I continued hurling arrows towards it while waiting for it to perch once more. After some time, the beast came back down and I hit it once more, before it launched me into the air. Thinking fast, I used my water bucket in order to save myself and got back into the fight. The dragon was almost dead. I could taste victory. It came down for one final battle. And I came out victorious. I collected my XP and my trophy, but I wasn't done yet, however. I still needed an elytra, so I began collecting some ender pearls and headed off to the outer islands. I spent days 85 through 99 on the outer islands, 14 days looking for an end city. I found a few small end cities, but none big enough for an elytra ship to be present. I was starting to lose hope. Would I be able to find an elytra before the 100-day mark? Should I return back home defeated? I thought to myself, wondering what I should do. I decided that I would stay and continue searching for the elytra. I needed this trophy, for it would make me feel like this 100 days was done. And that's when I found it. The big end city. It was huge. I fought my way up to the top, getting some decent loot along the way, but I only wanted one thing, the elytra. Once I reached the ship, I rushed down into the hold and found it, sitting there, calling to me. I grabbed it as quickly as I could, and rushed home. As I jumped into the return portal, I noticed the sun was setting on the 99th day. So, I went to sleep and woke up on the 100th day, just in time for some B-roll footage.